didn't fund them to start the uprising, but we helped them develop their skills and networking. It certainly played a significant role in what happened in the Arab Spring, but it was their own revolution that we did not start. However, many people think that this is not entirely true, because the United States gives millions of dollars every year to such non-profit organizations to establish democracy in different countries around the world, which they admit. Even if not, it was certainly used in the Middle East and North Africa during the Arab Spring, as evidenced by the former deputy director of the CIA. In a TV interview with Michel Morel, he said that the United States had a wrong idea about the so-called Arab Spring. In fact, it was a spring for al-Qaeda. This statement clearly shows that America was unable to achieve any benefit in the Arab Spring despite its efforts. This is because the United States had planned for a long time. Ultimately, after the Tunisian incident, the movement spread to many other countries at such a rapid pace that no one could control it anymore. Although the Arab Spring had an impact on many countries, significant changes and destruction occurred. On December 17, 2010, Bouazizi publicly set himself on fire in Tunisia, as if to protest against the country's regime. Although it seemed like a purely emotional event, the ordinary people of Tunisia understood Bouazizi's pain because they were constantly being oppressed by government forces. When the incident spread on the internet, the entire country took to the streets. The next day, strikes broke out in cities. During this time, Zainal Abidine was able to bring the situation under control. They tried to suppress the protesters with their hands, but to no avail. It did not work, but the public became more angry. In the meantime, Bouazizi died while undergoing treatment in January 2011. As a result, no obstacles could stop the public. As a result, on January 14th, Zainal Abidine dissolved his government and a state of emergency was declared in the country. Later, on January 17th, a new government was formed under the leadership of Mohamed Khanous. The caretaker government was established. Every step of the Tunisian movement was regularly broadcast online, which quickly spread beyond the country's borders and to neighbouring countries. Taking inspiration from the Tunisian people, ordinary people in Egypt also took to the streets against the long-serving dictator Hosni Mubarak in 2011. The protests began on January 25, 2011, with protesters gathering in Tahrir Square to demand Mubarak's resignation. The protests intensified on January 28, 2011. Thanks to social media, protests spread to every city in Egypt simultaneously, forcing Mubarak to hand over all responsibilities to Vice President Omar Suleiman. Then, when President Hosni Mubarak announced his resignation, the situation calmed down. After Tunisia and Egypt, another strong blow came to the country's power in Libya. At that time, the famous Arab leader Mohammed Gaddafi, who had worked tirelessly until 2010 to form a federal state based on Arab nationalism, was a staunch Westerner. He had no relations with the opposition Israel when he came to power in 1969. During his long rule, the common people of Libya liked him, but a large part of the population also wanted his downfall. So when the movement started in Tunisia, the United States and the opponents of Gaddafi seized this opportunity on February 15, 2011. The uprising against Gaddafi began just 3 days later. On February 18th, anti-Gaddafi parties captured the city of Benghazi, Libya's second largest city. Government forces immediately launched an operation to retake the city, but they were unsuccessful. On February 20th, the uprising spread to the capital, Tripoli, when Gaddafi's son Saif addressed the opposition on TV, saying that if the unrest was not stopped, Libya could have descended into civil war. So Libya was embroiled in a fierce civil war with counterattacks. The opposition formed an interim government in Benghazi, and various regions of the country fell into their hands on March 17th, in accordance with UN Security Council Resolution 1973. A few days after declaring a no-fly zone in Libya, the United States and its NATO forces entered Libya and began a heavy bombardment. As a result, Gaddafi's opponents jumped into action with renewed vigor, and by August they had captured the capital. Then, on October 20th, 2011, Gaddafi was killed in an attack by the opposition. Since then, 2020. The civil war in the country continued until 2011, and political unrest still exists today. On January 26, 2011, another important country, Syria, began a movement against the ruling Bashar al-Assad. Assad's political party, the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, was founded in 1963.
They have been in power since 2011. Basically, since then, they established a family-based regime in Syria. So the tide of the Arab Spring also came to Syria. But the Assad government did not spare any of the protesters, starting with women and children, and mass arrests were carried out. And during this time, Assad's close ally Russia stood by his side. America secretly helped the people, but it was of no use. Although by March, large numbers of people took to the streets in the important cities of Syria, Damascus, and Aleppo, the Assad government did not hesitate to fire to suppress them. Thus, the country became embroiled in a long civil war. When various foreign powers took advantage of the situation and entered the country, the situation became more complicated, with the Free Syrian Army, the Kurdish independence movement, and the emergence of many other armed groups, including ISIS. Then Iran, Russia, and NATO entered Syria. In addition, the Shia-Sunni conflict in the country became more pronounced. Overall, Syria became the world's most complicated battlefield, where who would fight against whom when? There was no guarantee, but surprisingly, Bashar al-Assad survived for a long time with the help of Iran and Russia. On December 8, 2024, Bashar al-Assad fled the country after 13 years of civil war, ending the Assad family's 6-decade reign of heroism. In mid-January 2011, protests erupted across Yemen, including the burning of Bouazizi prison, calling for an end to corruption and the restoration of the rule of law against President Ali Abdullah Saleh. The movement turned into a protest as the people's intentions were seen. On January the 27th, about 16,000 people gathered in the capital Sana'a. Then, on February 3rd, at least 20,000 protesters surrounded Sana'a. Law enforcement forces completely failed to control the crowd. As a result, political unrest continued throughout the year. Yemen finally reached a President Saleh agreed to hand over power to Vice President Mansour Hadi through an agreement. After much drama, President Saleh resigned on February the 27th, 2012, after 33 years in power. However, political stability has not yet been achieved in the country. Meanwhile, there is a possibility that the Arab Spring will also hit Saudi Arabia. It turns out that the Saudi royal family understood this and started delivering state services to the people's needs while also increasing civil privileges. Another important reason is that the United States, being a close ally of Saudi Arabia and one of its major oil buyers, certainly did not want anything like this to happen there, so it is even more understandable. It is known how actively the United States played a role in the Arab Spring. In addition, political unrest occurred in countries such as Bahrain, Kuwait, Morocco, Jordan, Palestine, Oman, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Kuwait, Mauritania, and Sudan under the influence of the Arab Spring. At the same time as Tunisia, it can be said that in almost all countries except Tunisia, the Arab Spring caused the suffering of the people. It did not bring anything good, especially since many ordinary people in Libya still regret the reign of a hero ruler, Gaddafi. So experts want to call the Arab Spring a failed movement, which can be somewhat predicted by looking at the current situation in those countries. Allah